Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea. Going to touch on a subject today that goes back a wee bit longer than probably a few of you have even been on this planet. Flashback way back to a moment in this nation's history when a man named Richard Milhouse Nixon was the president, specifically the year 1971, and even more specifically August 15th of that year. Now, without going to Google or DuckDuckGo, tell this puppet specifically what of great historical significance happened upon that very day. Well, okay, without further ado, that happened to be the date when the United States of America and other foreign nations were no longer permitted to convert U.S. dollars into gold bullion upon demand. The U.S. dollar was allowed to float in value against other foreign currencies, and hence was done the Bretton Woods era of global monetary policy, and hence was born the fiat currency. In all actuality, that is the day on which yours and mine slavery began. Yes, you heard me right, loyal viewers, slavery. But how could that be, puppet? When slavery was abolished within the borders of the United States way back in 1863, when then-President Abraham Lincoln issued an executive order, otherwise known as the Emancipation Proclamation, and all Southern slaves were required to be immediately set free. Well, kids, it is time this puppet goes there. You see, friends and colleagues, the only real method that any nation's currency is actually valued on global monetary exchanges in post-1971 times is through consideration of that particular nation's gross domestic product, or GDP, along with its credit rating and record of being capable of paying back its debt to other nations. Now, you and I know fully well that the USA would be in a gigantic pickle if all of our foreign lenders called in all of our debt tomorrow, but that is a video for another time. So, my good friends and colleagues, exactly how is the US dollar in fact the world reserve currency, or basically the standard upon which all other national monetary currencies are valued? Why is the US dollar the only currency used for the purchase of petroleum on world exchanges? Why have nations such as Zimbabwe, Cambodia, Ecuador, and Venezuela essentially done away with their nation's monetary currencies and allowed the US dollar to be their de facto street currency in modern times? Well, you see, the United States gross domestic product and creditworthiness is based upon nothing more than the blood, sweat, and tears of the American worker. Yes, you heard that right, folks. The entire reason the US dollar holds a lofty position among global and international money brokers is based upon yours and mine ability to get up every day and submit ourselves to the mental and physical abuse of the wage slavery game for another shift, rinse and repeat, ad nauseum. In the past few years, an epidemic has hit communist China called the Great Laydown. In essence, an entire generation of Chinese citizens has decided that enough is enough, and they are not going in to slave for the CCP meat grinder for another second. In all actuality, the Chinese capitalist system of the past 30 years, where they have stolen massive wealth from the rest of the world, could soon come crashing to the ground because of it. Now, why would this puppet bring up China in a conversation about Dick Nixon and the United States of America? Well, you see, if the U.S. working age population suddenly decided to lay down in a similar manner, all the corporate oligarchs would have heart palpitations. The reason being that the devaluation of the U.S. dollar on world exchanges would begin in earnest and would be almost unstoppable. In fact, the rank of the U.S. dollar as global reserve currency would most likely come to an abrupt end after 50-plus years of enjoying that status. So in all actuality, viewers, what we have is a great hamster wheel that all of us best not get off of, and please run faster. And that is what drives basically every cultural ill that woefully besets us here in supposedly the greatest nation on earth. Yep. Want to know why we truly cannot have good things? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's go there. You know how basically all of the Western nations have some form of nationalized health care, albeit with varying degrees of success? Why can we never have nationalized health care in the United States of America? And why are we the only nation on earth that ties our health care to our jobs and work? And in all actuality, what logical sense does any of that make? Well, you see, the oligarchs that rule are deathly afraid of what could potentially happen if we somehow were able to get all of our health care from somewhere else, and lo and behold, our wage slave jobs were not so important after all. How would we be able to hold the US dollar up as the world's reserve currency if that came to be? Can't have that now, can we? Now get back to work and stop thinking so deeply about things that don't concern you. Spin that wheel. I said faster. Want to know why Social Security in the United States is woefully behind the times with actually keeping up with the true cost of living, and so many of the elderly and infirm are going out and getting jobs at McDonald's and Walmart? Well, I'm glad you asked. You see, if we keep the retired and infirm contributing to that great American GDP, we can continue the ruse of keeping up appearances to the global oligarchs and also ensure that the US dollar is the world reserve currency. All at the expense of pain and suffering heaped upon those who should be enjoying their retirement years, but never mind any of that. Now get back to running on that wheel, I said. Want to know why inflation, such as we are currently seeing and suffered since Felon Joe stole office, is actually loved and encouraged by the ruling oligarchy and moneyed politicians in power? Why, that would be for no other reason than it costs so many to work overtime or get a third job just to pay bills and feed themselves and their families. We cannot have anyone getting too comfortable in this thing, can we? Just you get back on that wheel and run for your life. Get with it. Want to know why the odds of being able to win large monetary payouts in lotteries have substantially lessened over the past few decades in spite of lotteries being more popular than ever? You know how in many states and national lotteries the chances of actually winning enough of a prize to set you and your family up for life? Well, you see, we kind of have too many retiring early and getting off the great hamster wheel in the sky. That would be detrimental to our master plan, propping up the US dollar as the global reserve currency and making sure the Chinese yuan or any other nation's money never becomes the go-to banknote of international petroleum exchanges. For the love of God, we cannot have that. Now shut your mouth and get back to making that wheel spin faster. Have any of you ever considered why this country that we live in does not have much public transit infrastructure other than in bigger cities, despite so many other world nations having bus and rail transit systems that run between even small and medium-sized towns, burgs, and villages? Well, you see, it behooves us as a wage slave-driven oligarchy to keep everyone fetching and stepping in order to keep a car, truck, or van, or three available for their daily transportation needs, and the ensuing bank loans that require monthly installments to be regularly paid as well. So as long as the mind-numbed wage slave masses never catch on to how we are keeping them entrapped in our fiat currency scheme, all systems are a go. Now just you stop thinking this stuff through and get your nose back to that wheel. Now. Lastly, friends and colleagues, let me say that I do not believe for a single second that each and every politician currently in office knows about this system of entrapment when they actually run for office, but I do believe they learn about it the day they begin their governmental duties. It is a system long entrenched, begun by a crooked president over 5 decades ago, and the ones keeping it a well-oiled machine very quickly educate the new ones as soon as they enter the halls of government. As Rush said so long ago, conform or be cast out. Good night, my loyal viewers, and sleep well.